Hi, everybody. This is Kim Hughes, and I am so glad that you are joining me today as we talk about how you can become a powerhouse listing agent in your community. So, don't want to represent what we're going to talk about today because I'm not really going to go into how you market a listing, all the steps of what you need to do once you have a listing. You have a checklist for that. And if you don't have a checklist, stay with me because at the end, I'll have a special offer for you. But right now, what we want to talk about is one of the ways and the most important way to become a powerhouse listing agent in your community is to make sure that you have a solid plan on how you're going to keep communicating with your seller throughout the process of that listing. So that means from the moment you go on a listing presentation, what do you do after the listing presentation? Once you get the listing, now you're in the pre-listing phase. Then what are you going to do there to nurture that seller? Because this seller is going to become a future client, hopefully a buyer at the same time that they're selling. But maybe later on, we never know what they're going to do once they sell this property. But if they're moving out of state, moving out of the area, then you're going to refer them and all kinds of things could happen. So you do want to have, number one, make a good impression. Two, be true to yourself and what you're going to do with your client once they do become an active listing. So going through that is once you have the listing, what are you going to do over the time frame of having that listing agreement, whether it's 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, however long that listing is going to be, then you need to make sure that you have a very strong strategy of how you're going to communicate with your client on what is going on in the market, with the property, with the community, and how you're going to strategically market that property so that they can get the best buyers out there coming to look at it. Now, this could be a property that maybe it's going to be on the market for a couple of days and it sells. Could be on the market for multiple days, months, depending on the type of property it is, and the price range, and the agreement that you have with the seller, and all the things that go on. But what I want to talk to you about is how you're going to nurture the client throughout the process. So I'm not going to talk about, doing open houses, sending out just listed postcards, making sure that you do your social media and you do all your due diligence when that listing, when you go into the pre-listing and then you have an active listing. So what you want to do is think about the way you're going to communicate with that seller. How many times are you going to talk to them while this property is on the market? You should have a weekly time set aside to only contact your sellers and have a conversation with them and talk to them about what has happened in the past week on the property. And it may be that you don't need to talk to that seller on a weekly basis. Maybe it's a bi-weekly. If it's an out-of-town seller, then you may not communicate the same way. So you've got to know how you're going to communicate with your client. They need to understand how you're going to communicate with them. Leaving them in the dark kind of is a frustrating thing. So, if you say, I will, we are going to schedule a call every 2 weeks and I'm going to give you a total update, then let's schedule that call right now. Let's look at our calendars and let's schedule 20 minutes, every week or every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever. But in the meantime, this is what you're going to receive from me to keep you updated on what's going on with your property. This could be statistic reports that come from various programs that you have that can show you how many people have viewed the property. It could be from how many, your Google Analytics on your blog where you talk about the property. It could be showing your clients how many people reacted to posting it on social media. It could be how many leads you received from your postcard campaign, from your open house, how many when you did your e-blast to all the realtors in your market promoting that listing. could be from the email database that you sent that property to. So there's all kinds of ways that you can track the views and the exposure that the property is going to receive, so that your client knows. And one thing that I always want to make sure that my clients do when they have a listing is be upfront during that listing presentation and explaining to them, this is the way I market your listing. This is how we're going to stay in touch. This is how we're going to communicate. And this is, you're going to be a text message. Maybe you're a phone call. Maybe it's email. Whatever the best way to communicate with your seller is what you need to ask them. Ask them, how would you like to communicate? So when you tell them up front what they can expect from you from the moment they list until that property is closed, then that gives them a comfort zone. I have actually seen agents thought, I'm going to get that listing, and then they don't get it because they didn't explain how they would communicate with that seller during the activity of it. And I actually had a seller tell that agent, well, you went over how you're going to market it, but you never told me how you and I were going to communicate. And I never really thought about it until I had another agent come in and they went over that with me. So it's very important that your seller knows how you're communicating. They also need to know, of course, the marketing strategy. But here's the key. This whole blog is talking to you about how to communicate with your seller, because when you do that, when you sell that property, they're going to rave about you. They're going to become your biggest fan. They're going to talk to their friends, their family, whoever, about how wonderful you were during the process of that listing and how engaged you were with them. So that's what you want to focus on as well. That should be number one priority. Then I want you to kind of look at, at what phases of the listing are you changing things up? So that means, when you first get the listing, you have all this great, wonderful stuff that you're doing on the checklist, and then you kind of let that fizz out, and then, you've got to regroup every month, or maybe every 2 months or 3 months, and give life back to that listing. So you've got to make a strategy of how you're going to do that. When it comes to the end of the listing agreement, and that listing is getting ready to expire, and for whatever reason that property hasn't sold, that's when you really need to kind of give your extra effort. That's where you reach down deep inside and say, this is what else I need to do. I need to mix it up. I've got 30 more days. Whether they list with me or not, I'm going to go out with a bang, doing everything I can to market this property and show that seller that I have given it 150%. And when you do that, even though that seller may not renew with you, they cannot say that you did not give them 100%, because you did. And when that listing does expire, and if they choose not to list with you, that's when you sit down with them and ask them, what could I have done to make you feel better about our relationship during the listing process? Did you see anything that I may not have done or communicated with you in any way? And if they say, oh no, you communicated great, it was just, maybe we were overpriced, whatever that reason is, then you can walk away and say, you know what, they were happy with the way that I communicated with them. And then of course, hopefully you've got the listing, they relisted with you. But if they didn't, then you still send them a thank you, and you appreciate them, and you keep them in your database, and you still send them birthday cards, and you still send them a Christmas card or a holiday card. And, you figure out what's the best way to stay in contact with those that are in your database that did not buy or sell with you. So I want you to think about that. And in my blog, I give you some real detailed notes about it. But I also want you to know that if you need a checklist, I do have a listing checklist that I'm more than happy to give to you so you can download it. And of course, it's generic. It's should have had it up and ready for you, but here it is. So this is an Excel spreadsheet, and you can kind of go through this and see how detailed it is. But I want you to really look at is everything that you're doing at the beginning of the listing. A lot of that you can repeat on a monthly basis, through in the middle, or at the last 30 days. So I really think that that would be a benefit for you. If you already have a checklist, then you can compare it, see if there's something you can add from mine, or maybe yours is even better than mine. So, you know, if you feel that you need help in this area, please feel free to reach out and give me a call. You can call me or email me, kim@kimhughes.com. And then, you know, read the blog. It'll give you a ton of information. And then hopefully we can connect on the internet and talk about this more. So if you have any questions, any tips, any information you'd like to share, please feel free to put it below, and I will check it frequently, and we will respond to all comments. But if you feel more comfortable in me emailing me privately, feel free to do so. Thank you, and you have a great day, and I just wish you all the best in your listing presentations. Bye-bye.